Hello! We're going to take a moment to just look at my bookshelf a moment for a very good reason. This is one of the 3 different bookshelves we have, and this one happens to be in here, my little domain. And I have a few computer games box that I like, and a few books, and we have lots and lots of programming things. We have Java here, we have Pascal there, C++ here, we have Basic here, some other bits and bobs, real-time processing, artificial intelligence, game engine design. You know, there are books that are very old. This is my Atari ST Basic book. Okay, there are books that are, you know, quite new, C++, more effective. There are books that I bought for languages that are probably, you know, not really applicable anymore. Of all of these books, I can say one thing: they have a use. Okay? Unfortunately, the only use I can find for this book is as a doorstop. This book is hideous. I have this book free for review from the Amazon Vine customer review program, and it's not worth the paper it's printed on. It's simply a waste of time and energy. It is not good. Okay, now I will preface this by saying I've only read halfway through it, as you can tell by where my post-its stop. However, having a cursory look at it, I don't hold much from it, especially since sort of the last 100 or so pages are just the appendices. So what's so bad about this? Well, first of all, it is a for dummies book. Your sights are therefore set pretty low, but it says coding. And I'm a professional software engineer. That's what I do for a living. I don't code things, but I certainly wouldn't say this is teaching you anything about coding. It is at a push, at a tiny push, showing you a infinitesimal tiny amount of HTML, JavaScript things-ish. But even then, it itself says, go somewhere else and look for a better example. This is a big, thick book. Why is it sending me to Code Academy and to Google's Codeplex and a few other places? Why is it sending me to other places and saying in the text, they provide a better, more thorough introduction? There's nearly 1,000 pages, whereas actually, to be precise, 755 pages. In 755 pages, they can't give a brief introduction to HTML tags. Now, they do give you some tables and show you how they work and all bits and bobs like that, and they introduce things to you, but it isn't coherent. It just isn't. It's just not right. And we start that from the very beginning of the book. Okay. In 2005, 3 coders created YouTube, which allows anyone to release songs. Today, more songs are uploaded to YouTube that have been released by all the record labels combined in the last century. Yeah, they did create YouTube in 2005, but not specifically for music. They created YouTube to let people share video. That's what YouTube does. It happens to be a very good medium for music videos, just like MTV was in the 1980s. One could say what goes around comes around. They didn't specifically do that to put one in the eye of the music industry. Spotify, however, could be argued that they did, you know, and there's MP3 sharing services of dubious legality from time immemorial, could be argued, did something to put one in the eye of releasing more product than music labels. But even without copyright theft, there's been a thriving underground world of people sharing their own songs and their own music forever, since the campsite caveman. So it's just rubbish. This is just utter drivel. And then you start going through it a bit more carefully. So there's so many comments.
So here, after 8 pages, is a screenshot. It's just dark. You can't really see it. I can't really see it either. And it's kind of showing you a function, launch Pong, computer code from the game Pong. No, it's not. The game Pong was not written in this language. This language didn't exist when Pong was created. And it's things like that that annoy me throughout. Write your first computer program. You know, it talks about code. The most important to take away is to remember that computer programs use code to literally exactly tell the computer to execute a set of instructions. No, the code is the set of instructions, or the code is something that gets turned into the set of instructions if you're compiling the language. None of this is explained. None of this is explained at all. It is just bunkum, just complete rubbish. It is not. Yeah, here we go. Web-based software. Yeah, it's not talking about the server-side bits and bobs. It's just name dropping. Uber, Airbnb, Groupon. Ooh, they're names that I know from the internet, and I'll be able to, do the same thing. And no, you won't. You just won't. And then they compare low-level and high-level programming languages. Comparing interpreted languages, but it's too late, and it's not correct anyway. And then they talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, using libraries. I'm a big fan of using a library, but they don't explain really what libraries are. They are decide to use parts of an app code themselves, or apps that people have been built by others. It's drivel. It's not even English. It's just drivel. And Huffington Post, another name you recognise, just to keep you interested. Simple guided tutorial. Here we go. I mentioned it earlier. If you're going to edit the headline, follow the steps. Visit blah 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 Google's webmaker.org for an easier, more guided tutorial. This book should be the easier guided tutorial. Why is this massive book not able to teach a bit of HTML? And then here it talks about the technical order of getting your machine to browse to a web page. It doesn't mention how it actually works, and I made a note of that. And then it mentioned DMS, a little DMS provided by your ISP, but other people provide DNSs like Google and Amazon and all sorts of places. You can look up domain names all over the place. It's just a bit odd that's suddenly the first technical thing they provide. They don't show you HTML. Just open a page, double click on a HTML file you put on your desktop and it opens in a browser. You don't need all this over confusion, this just stuff that just leaves the reader at sea and they can't understand what you're talking about. And suddenly, from not even knowing that you can just write a web page and put it on a folder or on a disk on your desktop and double click it, it suddenly talks about the back end and the front end. So I need a server, I need a box somewhere else to do this with. It all gets too overcomplicated. You just don't need it. And then it talks about defining web mobile applications. A web mobile application, let's talk about Android. For Android, you would write an application and you deploy them as an APK that gets downloaded, perhaps through the Google Play Store, let's pretend. This isn't that. This is just talking about putting a web page on a browser on a mobile, which you could do just by opening Chrome on your Android anyway and using it. But it's there. It's just complete rubbish. And then again, these examples are just from other websites. Whoever this lady is with her website might be a very pretty website, but it's not. This book hasn't showed you how to make that website, and it just carries on. HTML, CSS. It's not explained how you view them. How you would have a CSS for the desktop, a CSS for printing, and a CSS for the mobile. It just hasn't explained it. It just doesn't explain that. It just had to do web applications. So I've got to write all my own code. Can't I make them scale across them both? Or can't I write one page that looks on? Of course you can write one page that looks on both. This book isn't telling you this. It's just completely rubbish. It drops more names here. Talking about Apple and Google and wrangles about how they did things. It's complete conjecture. It's complete conjecture. It's just rubbish. and then just still no HTML. So we're at page 31 and we've still not had any code whatsoever. No code has been shown to us. More name dropping still. They're dropping, brands and Facebook, and I'm not sure what that one is. Starbucks is another name that you might remember. We've run out of chapter. We're already at chapter 3 and we've not learned any coding. Oh, becoming a programmer. Right. So what's this teaching us? Software development, waterfall, agile. That's a bit ahead of it. Teach someone to sit down, open an editor and write some script before this, surely. Why these two examples? Why agile without mentioning things like Scrum or anything like that? Iterative steps towards creating a program, or the waterfall. The sequential steps. Waterfall doesn't work. We all know waterfall doesn't work, but you've not mentioned the original software lifecycle. You've just not mentioned it. Just nothing. No mention of Jordan, SSADM, nothing. Just no design ethos. Just do this, do it again. And then it talks about feature branches. But you've not mentioned source control. So complete rubbish. Just complete off the head rubbish. Ideas. Pretty good, this bit, like this. Mock up of a web page. Good example, good layout, stick to the point. Quite a useful thing. But you've got to sort of get through all this hunkum bunkum to get to there. And then immediately, we've still not written any code, remember? We've not written a single line of code. Debug your code. Debug what? I've not written anything. You've not taught me anything. Working offline. Right, so now it's telling us to open a browser, or so open an editor and to save the file, and then double click on it. Which is what needed to be said all these pages ago. It's just complete rubbish. And then immediately that it's told you to work in an editor, it's telling me to go to codeacademy.com. Again, it's an easiest way to start coding. Isn't this book going to teach me anything? Lessons form the basis for this book. So the lessons that haven't been taught that are in this book are on Code Academy. So why am I paying $17.52 for this book? It's complete rubbish, complete and utter drivel. That's the end of the first book. That's the end of the first book, and we've still not had any code. We've not been shown any code whatsoever. The next bit is about getting a career in coding. The whole chapter is about getting a career in coding. So all of that is just about getting a career in coding. My other notes are, oh yeah, this comes on to teach you about leading a team of developers. You've not taught them to code one file. No, I've not. And you can lead a team of programmers. Yeah, I can lead a team. Yeah, because I've not written a file. No, not written a file. Do you see what I'm saying here? Why do you want to lead? You've not dev engineering, team leading, scrum master. These are all roles that have just not been mentioned. That's been completely ignored. The other thing about this is it's all very American. It talks about getting into computer science classes. Columbia University being the example. We're all going to Columbia. That's just ridiculous. Just utterly ridiculous. Basic web coding. This is book 3. This isn't chapter 3. Okay. This is 9 books in one. So this is book 3. Is it going to teach me any HTML? No, we can open an editor. Look, picture of an editor. In fact, a picture of opening WordPad, perhaps the worst editor for this ever. Just, I cannot believe it. The layout of a word processor. First of all, WordPad. It's more than generous to call it a word processor. And second of all, you would not create HTML in WordPad. And then it immediately goes on to understanding the structure of HTML, but it doesn't explain from the ground up. It doesn't start at the HTML tag, the body tag, the title tag, etc. No, it just tells you about elements, and they're opened and closed with less than and greater than brackets. Left angle bracket. Well, it's a less than sign in the UK. And yeah, you could call it a left angle bracket and a right angle bracket. But the annoying thing is, can you see? I don't actually, but I need to look. See where my finger is. Get it to focus. Can you see? It says bracket, and then there's 2 marks and a squiggle in the middle. The squiggle in the middle is the less than marker, the angled bracket. The two things either side are a normal, regular rounder bracket. So if you were an absolute beginner, you might think you have to do rounder bracket, angle bracket, rounder bracket. Duh! You don't, but it doesn't explain that. It doesn't explain it at all. And then here, just shy of page 100, we're at page 97. Yeah? So 1/7-ish of the way through this whole book, and it's still not taught us any code whatsoever. It gives you this example, yeah, of a H tag, yeah, just there in the middle of nowhere, and then it gives you an invalid tag, rockstar tag. But it's not explained what the rockstar tag is. Rockstar is not a standard HTML tag. Where did it come from? What does it do? What's that about? It doesn't explain anything. And then just completely out of nowhere, USA. Go USA. No reason why. It's actually trying to explain adding an attribute that when you hover over USA, it gives you this title. But you've still not introduced the header tag, the title tag, the body tag, all these other things. There are no examples of them yet. So why do we care about this more advanced feature when we've not done the absolute basic? There's no point teaching somebody higher element items if you've not taught them the basics. You have to teach people the absolute basics, the lowest common denominator. You have to teach them hot dogs and beans before they learn about foie gras. It's just ridiculous, this is, as was that analogy. But this is even more ridiculous. What's this one say? See, I can't even read my own topics. Oh yeah, so you've not done any HTML, and suddenly you've got to familiarize yourself with the tags. So they're just giving you lists of tags to try, you know, lists of header tags to try. There's no actual code yet. We ain't learned any code. Just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. And then this one. I love this one. Okay. So this has all been talking about HTML and CSS and stuff. It briefly mentioned higher and lower level languages and machine code. And it randomly has this picture of Grace Hopper, Admiral Grace Hopper, and Bill Gates. Okay? There's no explanation as to why they've chosen a picture of Admiral Grace Hopper and Bill Gates. It says, images of Grace Hopper, a US Navy Rear Admiral, and Bill Gates, co-founder of Microsoft, rendered using image. Okay. It would seem very, very random to someone that they picked this picture of this elderly admiral. Why? She invented the basic programming language. Okay, she invented a way of making the very nondescript machine level language look like a humanly interpretable something. So we're not talking about a sort of assembly language, it's one step above machine language. We're talking about actual human words that made sense. So in basic, you could go sort of 10, print hello, 20, go to 10. That very basic example. She came up with that idea. She came up with that whole concept. The details are much more important. You can go look up Grace Hopper all you like. That's why she's there. Bill Gates is not there because he is the chairman or was the founder of Microsoft. He's there because he wrote the first basic interpreter for the first PC, arguably the first PC, which was the Altair 880 from MIPS, or MIPS, I forget which. So he was out in Albuquerque, New Mexico when he founded Microsoft, and their first thing was to put a basic interpreter onto paper tape, fly Paul Allen across the world or country, and get, you know, Altair Basic to run. Okay, that's why these two people are here. Basic coding, basic language, the basic language, like French or German. Basic is a language. That's why they're there. But there's no explanation. There's no this author gives no credence or explanation. Why have they got this old lady there? It's just not explained, and it's really annoying. Just really annoying because someone would have thought, that's very clever. I've got that in there. I know why I've put that in there, and it's so backwards. You know why you put it in there, but you've written this book to teach people. You can't teach people without telling them. It's just ridiculous. Here we go, another one. So we get to the end of this chapter. This is actually the end of the book. It's just the end of the chapter. Yeah, this was the chapter, remember, that was going to show us basic HTML coding. It's still not shown as any. Okay, and it says, go to tinyletter.com, coding for dummies, to see the language commands by. So I'm going to go somewhere else again. Yeah. And then now go to the Code Academy in browser exercises. Why aren't they in this book? Put them in the book. I bought the book because I'm on a desert island and don't have the internet. So getting more out of HTML, I'd like to get anything out of HTML from this book. It's taught me nothing. You know, it just has taught me nothing. Okay. So completely out of nowhere, we're now nesting lists of information on the web page. Okay, it's still not got header or body or any of that. It just starts the file, line 1, with a comment. Doesn't explain it's a comment, doesn't do anything on the screen, doesn't explain that that is inert within the code. It's just ordinary list. Well, header 1, tasks for today. OL, ordered list. Is that what? What is this? What? Why have you done this? It's so annoying. It is really just completely out of nowhere. And then suddenly, without explaining anything, there's a picture of another web page, botnet or boxnet. Sorry, boxnet. Why? How did that come up? And how does that relate to this example? It doesn't. And you're showing people tables. In 2017, you're still kicking people off with tables. Now, I do not disagree that tables have their use in HTML. I use them myself. But surely you teach them about div, you know, and span before you teach them tables. Okay? But still, there's not really any code. Still not been any code. And I even put that note. There's no code yet, but it's teaching me about stretching tables and labels by, again, showing me Yahoo's page. Go Yahoo. But why would I need to see it? And then the most trivial code example is stuck in there just for good measure, just to make it look like. This is clearly a book that got past the editor and actually got turned into a book by just being hefty, because it's 9 books in one, and the editor not knowing what the hell they were reading. Because suddenly it starts giving you examples of code. Look, these are HTML tags and CSS tags. You have no idea what they do. How do I use a line left? How do I use a line center? And it does it again, look, align center. Oh, align center. Why does it just explain it once and say cells and rows have the same attributes? They inherit those attributes because table itself can have align right, center, or justify. And then the whole lot is aligned left, right, or justify, or whatever. And they haven't explained that at all. Complete garbage. I skip on here. I skipped forward past a load of all this junk. There's just a random picture of someone. An image is set as the background. Pretty sure that's a copyright infringement. I think that's a lady singer. Don't quote me. It's probably Beyonce or somebody like that. And I'm sure they didn't give permission for their image to be in here. But randomly, this is the first time where we get HTML explained. The HTML tag, the head tag, title tag, body tag. Ooh, that is actually the first time we see a web page. 147, page 147, we finally see a web page example. I could go on. And that's called building your first web page. You've just shown it me on that side, and then tell me what I've done on that side. It's ridiculous. Again, I skipped forward here. It did all sorts of horrible stuff here. It talks about AJAX randomly, jQuery randomly. It doesn't explain what they are. It goes, people manually copying and pasting data from into database can be crowdsourced, such as RelyOnMonNet. Like what? So people are copying and pasting data, such as the NASDAQ stock exchange obtained some data in this way. What's that got to do with anything? Why is that completely come out of nowhere? And then it goes on about, you know, data availability and things, and then using JavaScript libraries. Now, I hate this. Where is it? There we go. A JavaScript library is pre-written JavaScript code. I mean, it is. That makes the development process easier. Well, maybe not. If you're a programmer, you know what I mean. The library includes code for common tasks that has already been tested and implemented by others. Now, implemented by others, yes. Tested, not necessarily. To use the code for these common tasks, you only need to call the function or method as defined in the library. That's true. Two of the most popular JavaScript libraries are jQuery and D3JS. Sort of, yeah, but why leap people straight into jQuery? Okay, and they drop that little fact on a page and then jump to something else on a different chapter. So good luck with that. Good luck with your one paragraph on D3JS. And then this is about understanding callbacks and closures. So we've still not been shown any JavaScript or any functions or anything like that. There's none in that previous bit. We've got to understand callbacks and closures because they're really important. And yeah, it's not really explained functions yet. We could understand them. Then there's structuring code in here. So there's actually some code. It's probably hard for you to read. I'm just looking at my monitor. It's horrible for you to read because it's in K&R format, and why are there brackets on a different page? And it's not explained that this plus equals relates to the next page. If this is for an absolute beginner, you've got to explain that that's meant to be on there. And why is it bracket quote this something quote plus something quote and a tag? There's a tag. You've just told me about these tags, and there's a tag all on its own. Oh, and it's the wrong tag here. It's a BR without a slash on the end there. Well, it's just style, but you know what I mean, don't you? And it just carries on. It just carries on in the same stupid way. It explains here, or it explained earlier about using AJAX. Okay, and then there's this piece of code here. There's this piece of code. You see this? See these lines? It's really crowded. It's the first time that there's like a lot of comments explaining what the code is doing, and it's literally explaining line by line. But it's not explaining that these are comments, and they're different to the HTML comments they inserted earlier because it's in the script tag, but they still haven't explained what the script tag is. It's rubbish, it's just so rubbish. And this was a book teaching you how to be like a team leader and stuff earlier, and they've not taught you to write self-documenting code at all. Okay, now this is just throwing the reader to the wolves because this is introducing AJAX. And it explains a whole bunch about AJAX, okay? And then it explains about using this, and then it suddenly says, at the head of jQuery's AJAX capabilities lies AJAX, okay, blah, blah, blah. Right. So one of the most useful things about jQuery is how it simplifies AJAX. So it mentioned jQuery. It's introduced AJAX, as a way to work for like 30 pages, and then goes, for a better way to do it is through jQuery. Just not going to work, is it? Just off it goes, and that's it. So that's the end of book 4. We're on book 5 of 9. This is nearly where I stopped because straight away this whole section. Okay, so we've got Jonathan Ive, the designer at Apple. We've got Mark Otto and Jacob Thornton. We've got Sundar Pichai, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, a Google product manager, and Yukihiro Matsumoto, who created Ruby. Just a chapter about them, just randomly, just in there. Obviously, this is a book in its own right. That was a book on its own. But why name drop them? Why name drop them in here? Why? What benefit has that had? Nothing. I've wasted time, energy, electricity recording this, explaining that this is a waste of my time. Okay, so we're on page 320. We're about halfway through the book now. Okay, and I skip forward here. This is my last comment. Just introducing Python and things like that. Okay, and my comment to myself is, this is just utter tosh. And it is. It's just horrible. It's just really bad because this is talking about suddenly writing a script in Python. It's not explained anything about Python or that it runs on your machine or on your server and you could perhaps serve a web page from Python to a browser anymore. Nah. And then suddenly the next chapter I gave up on because it's installing a Python distribution. And I hate it. I hate this book. It is an utter and total waste of my time. I thought, I thought some of this was going to be interesting about sprites and things, and it's just not. So I would basically not bother with this book. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It's just rubbish. So I'm sorry, mix of 9 authors. You've managed to get 3.5 stars up there. I'm giving this 1 because that's the lowest possible mark I can give this useless hunk of rubbish. I'll be off. See you soon.